Before we start, just a quick reminder. The views and content shared on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Hi. Today we are breaking down what do you need in order to be self-centered. So we are unveiling the centered framework, which helps you build ego strength, stay rooted in your real self, and create a life and relationships that take care of your well-being and happiness. So if you have been listening to our series on the ego, you have learned how it develops, how it gets distorted, how it shows up in others and in yourself. And this framework is where we bring it all home. It is your toolkit for building a centered, self-led life. And it is the last episode of our 4-episode series on the ego. So we made it.
Yay.
And as you listen, as with literally all the episodes in the series, just notice, reflect, which of these traits come naturally to you and which ones are you still working on strengthening? There are lots of different ways to strengthen these. Of course, listening to the podcast helps. In the future, we are going to have workbooks, we are going to have retreats, we are going to have all types of things that are going to help you. But you can also identify, hey, I need to work on clarity of self, for example, which is what C stands for in the centered framework. And centered is an acronym. So each of those letters in centered stands for something. So you might say, hey, I need some help with clarity of self. I don't actually know what my needs are. I actually don't know my limits. I actually can't tell the difference between my intuition and my conditioning, what I've been taught to believe. I actually judge myself too much, and it's hard for me to reflect on my patterns and really understand who I am. I'm going to go find a therapist to help with that. So it doesn't have to be us that you're getting these things through, but we want to share with you each of these pillars is something that you want to be strong in, because these pillars are what is going to hold up your centered self. So I'm just going to go over each of the pillars real quick, and then we're going to describe each of them one by one. And as we go through them one by one, Katie and I are going to talk about where do we think that we fell on this pillar when we weren't self-centered, and now that we're more self-centered, where do we think we are? And also, if we feel like there's more we can do to strengthen that, we're not all the way there, we can share that too. Like I said, the centered framework is an acronym, centered. C stands for clarity of self. E stands for emotion regulation. N stands for needs ownership. T stands for truthful communication. E stands for embodiment. R stands for reciprocity in relationships. E stands for ego awareness. And D stands for directed by values. So that's all of them. We're going to go into explaining each one, and then we're just going to chat about it. So clarity of self. Clarity of self is being clear about who you are. So know who you are, what you value, what you need, and then letting that clarity of who you are, what you value, what you need, what you want, let that guide your choices instead of other people. You can ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? Because that's going to tell you, who am I when I don't feel pressured to be someone else? Mm-hmm. Here's a metaphor for clarity of self. It's like having a compass in the fog. The fog is when you're feeling pressure to be someone that you're not, or do something that would pull you out of your seat. And instead of just doing that and getting lost in the fog, you look at your compass of, well, who am I? What are my values? What do I need? And that helps you move in the direction that you need to move in, even when there continues to be this fog and this pressure from other people. So, clarity of self. I haven't actually thought of this ahead of time. Do you know for you?
I know.
Okay,
I do
great.
know. This one I know.
Go, do it.
So what's interesting is clarity of self has been really hard for me for like most of my life up until almost the ego episode.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Up until 2 weeks ago.
There are many things that I resonate with and that I can feel and know that I resonate with until the moment happens. And then everything gets fuzzy. And I think this is because of having such a long history of gaslighting through relationships and then gaslighting
Internalizing
myself.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason that it came up for me was there was a situation, I won't go into detail about the situation, but essentially this situation happened that I heard about something going on with a friend and an interaction with someone that I used to be connected to. And I remember when I heard about this situation, there were accusations made towards me. And the accusations aren't true. But I remember hearing about them and I immediately panicked and I was like, oh my God, did I do that? And I was like super invested in, holy shit, I need to repair. I need to make sure that this is right. And then I thought about it more and I was like, wait a second. I didn't do that. That's not in alignment with my values. And I was like, oh, the fact that I'm even questioning this for a moment reminds me my values and shows that I do act in alignment with my values. Because we had just come off of the ego episodes and I'm like, oh, this isn't about me. This is about them and their things. And I'm reacting this way.
Oh my gosh,
because
that's the
it's
whole point of teaching about ego is
I
so
know,
you can
right?
see when it's not you.
Yeah, exactly. It was so special. It happened in real time. I learned about this thing. People approached me about this thing, told me what was going on. I panicked for a solid 2 hours because I was also in the midst of work when I found out this stuff. I panicked for a solid 2 hours, going and ruminating through my mind of like, what did I do? When could I have done it? What could I have said? What did like the start of gaslighting myself, right?
Yes.
And then I stopped and I was like, wait a second. The sheer fact that I'm thinking about this and that I'm so considering this possibility is in alignment with my values and what I believe to be true and what is important to me. And so then I thought about it more and I was like, I actually didn't say anything that would confirm this story. There is no truth to this story. This is someone's projections. And it brought me back to myself, right? And why I bring that up in terms of clarity of self, because I have never, I don't want to say I've never, until the ego episodes, I didn't pause to think, what are my values explicitly? There are things that like I care about human rights. I care about people. Love is really important to me, just like a generic love for people, self-respect, respect for others, those sorts of things, like baseline stuff. But in terms of how I present myself and operate within the world and what that looks like on a functional level day to day, that part is not something that I've internalized and said, oh, this is what I do that is in alignment with those values. This is the action, this is the belief, and those things are tied together. I never connected those dots. And so when moments like this would happen where someone might question my character or make a statement against me, I would be so tempted to be like, oh my God, yeah, I must have done that.
Yeah.
And I would go down the shame spiral. Even today, this was so random, working in the gym, it was very loud today and there wasn't many of us. And I'm in a very small studio. There were 3 trainers and 3 clients. And one of the trainer client pairs, they're super close and they're like besties almost. And so they were like hyping each other up, but they were like really loud, just normal talking. And we're in a small space and I'm working with an elderly client. So it's like really hard to hear. And I snapped and I was like, you guys are so fucking loud. And immediately when I did that, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have snapped. Like that was not, cool.
Yeah.
And in the moment, if I was not acting in alignment with my values, I would have just like ignored it.
Yeah.
But then I was like, no, it would feel better for me to actually apologize and be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I snapped at y'all. And they were like, oh, we didn't even, that like, we were being loud actually. And it wasn't even a thing. But again, it was the connection of, okay, I'm recognizing what action would be in alignment with my values right now. And what's in alignment with my values is not to snap at people. And when I do that, to repair, right? And so that's what I'm saying is like, I didn't realize all these things until the ego episode very recently.
Wow.
Like, I know what I generally believe, but if you ask me to put it on a piece of paper and say how my actions show that,
Right.
yeah, I hadn't done that. So that's a new one for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's great.
too.
And I also want to say, and you know this, but for selfies, regardless of whether or not the people that Katie snapped at said, oh, it's okay, we were loud, we didn't even realize it, no big deal, or they said, yeah, you're a fucking bitch, Katie still acted in alignment with her values, and that's what mattered.
Yes.
In that situation was that her behaviors were in alignment with her values, and people snap, people mess up. That's fine. What isn't fine is when your mess up becomes the same mess up repeated over time and becomes a pattern. And then people come to you and say, hey, you keep snapping at us and we have an issue with that. And can you work on that? And you say, yeah, I'll work on that. Or you say, no, I'm not going to work on that. If you said, yeah, I'm going to work on it, then you don't work on it and you don't change your behavior. That's when it crosses the line from mess up to mistreatment. So I just want to be really clear about that like she was still in alignment with her values, even though her behavior initially was out of alignment because she brought it back in. Does that make sense? And the other person's response doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Love that. Yay. So for me, I think it's interesting. I think for all of us, we all start kind of at the bottom of the pillar for all of these because, you know, we all have to develop from somewhere. And for me, I think I thought I knew who I was and what I valued. And I didn't realize yet that it had been just taught to me, right? Like we're kind of on autopilot, but we don't know we're on autopilot until we realize it. And that's when we have a choice. So I think for a long time, what I valued was looking a certain way, being, I don't want to say being cool, because I didn't need to be popular, but I did need to be pretty and I did need to be seen a certain way. And what I valued was that people liked me. And I thought that I was being authentic and just showing different sides of me when I was more of like a chameleon. And just being who they wanted me to be. I eventually realized that because I used to be mean. I mean, I was always nice, but then I had these moments of being mean when I thought I was better than other people when I was younger. Like I remember this one girl, if I ever saw her again or connected to her, I would apologize. But I remember in middle school that she thought I was really cool and that I had cool clothes. And there was a dance at school. And I remember she called me and she was like, what are you wearing? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I was on the phone with her and I went and was looking through my drawers. And I was like, oh, I have all these skirts. I'm not sure. And she's like, oh my gosh, how many do you have? And I was like, I have this many. Why? How many do you have? And I literally in the moment remember thinking, oh, she thinks I'm better than her. And I can capitalize on that by making her feel worse about herself and propping myself up more. Yeah. And I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I was just thinking I am better than her and I get to keep feeling good about myself. And if she feels bad about herself, well, that's just aligned with what's really true. Like she's not as cool as me, which is so messed up. And I remember that I think because it's so not aligned with my values now, but I think the community that I grew up in, I mean, being raised in Connecticut, it's all about appearances. So I think I kind of absorbed that, but then I had a lot of depth in other ways. So I don't really know, but I guess I always thought I have depth inside, but that people don't value that. So the most important thing is for me to have value that you can see on the outside externally. And then the people that I actually care about and who I think it's okay for them to get to know me, then I'll open up. But now that I'm looking back, I'm like, yeah, that's so protective.
Yeah.
and that's protective in a community where the culture is who you are isn't safe.
Yeah.
And so depth isn't important. What's important is how much money you make and how big your house is and how you dress and how many friends you have and all the vacations you're going on and how pretty you are. So yeah, I always remember thinking that's the most important thing is that I look a certain way. And if you go back to the episodes about ego, the second episode of this series, so that would be 2 episodes ago, the one before the last one, the one before the gaslighting one, we talked about how the last step of development is around identity formation and that you need to be able to actually try on different identities. And so maybe that's an identity that I tried on and I realized that that's not where I want to be. So now I think I have very strong clarity of self.
Give me an E.
Give me an E for emotion regulation. Regulating your emotions is being able to stay present with your feelings without getting hijacked by them. Being able to self-soothe and respond instead of just having a reaction that you were on autopilot and just did without thinking. Instead of getting pulled into shame, you can stay present with yourself and know that you have value even if other people see you in a negative light. And being able to stay steady in conflict. And it's not about not feeling strong emotions. It's actually about being able to feel those strong emotions without flooding, without doing or saying something impulsive, without collapsing into shame and feeling like you're the worst person ever. And this also helps with delayed gratification and with resilience. Having good emotion regulation allows you to trust yourself because you can trust that you can really handle anything and that you're going to be able to respond instead of react and do something you regret. And like we just said, it's okay to have mess ups, right? But
Right.
yeah. So for me, oh my gosh, I could not regulate my emotions. My emotions owned me. Oh my gosh, what I experienced, what I learned about emotions is that in order to be taken seriously, for my feelings to be taken seriously, they had to be big. And in order to prove that I was in pain or that this mattered, they had to be big. And so without even realizing it, I think I actually contributed to increasing my emotions instead of regulating, like doing the opposite, making them bigger. And oh my gosh, I have memories of when an ex broke up with me. I had a cyst that had ruptured, and I used that to gain sympathy from him and his family. I remember calling his mom in high school and crying and being like, we just broke up and now I have this cyst that ruptured and everything's so bad. And I mean, a lot of that was because I didn't have the ability to regulate my emotions. I couldn't soothe myself. I couldn't be there for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have that skill yet. I didn't have that capacity. And so it's almost like I needed to make it so big so that people would come rescue me. So embarrassing to look back at, for sure. And I actually apologized to that ex once I worked through a lot of things years later and did develop the ability to regulate my emotions. But yeah, I would just sob, I would scream. Oh my gosh, it was. And then on the other end, I would hide my emotion. Like it depended on who I was around and what the situation almost like quote unquote required from me, if that makes sense, like based on the person. And I think, again, and we've talked about this, we'll probably touch on it in every single episode. At that time, I wasn't going to be any different in terms of my emotion regulation. And to an extent, I did need to hide to the extent I did when I needed to hide. And I did need to kind of make my emotions bigger. Because making your emotions big also proved that you loved other people. So there was just a lot of messed up beliefs. And now I'm so glad that I can regulate my emotions. I'm very good at it. And the thing that I'm working on now that you'll hear more about in the next next episode on what it's like for me to come out of survival mode. Now I'm working on letting myself actually feel my feelings more, because when I was in survival mode, I had to kind of ignore them.
Yeah. Yeah, when I think about myself, it's interesting like what stages of life we're viewing ourselves through. Like when you were saying, I really struggle with this, I'm in my mind, I'm like, okay, well who do you envision?
Yeah.
Like what age of you,
Totally.
right? What stage of your life do you envision
Yeah.
when you're talking about that? And you answered it, the high school version with the breakup and whatnot. But for myself, I definitely struggled with emotional regulation until I got married and just before getting married. My relationship with the guy that I married, we were together for 10 years. So long relationship that started when I was in high school. And the early parts of that relationship were okay. Maybe from the outside were fine. But I definitely struggled more with the emotional regulation because my models for observing how people behave in a romantic relationship,
Yeah.
they didn't have the best coping mechanisms for conflict.
Because there was silent treatment, right?
Silent treatment and then explosions and silent treatment. Yeah. So that was kind of my model. And I knew that I didn't want that. So when I first started exhibiting that, I was like, oh, wait, I need to change this. And I'm the type of person that once I see something, I do it. And I will follow through with that. And I will go balls to the walls and make sure that it's done. Right. And that becomes the new framework for me. In my marriage, when it started becoming abusive and well, it was kind of always that way, but when I became clear that was what was happening.
When it was obvious abuse. Yeah.
Yes. And when the gaslighting got really intense and I was just constantly confused and I was like, this is all fucked up. I was just back and forth on the ping pong and I was like, I am so confused. At that time, my attitude towards marriage was, okay, well, you're married forever. You're with this person for life. Divorce is not a thing.
Yeah.
Because that's very religious. You don't get the only reason that you get divorced is because someone cheated. That's the only sanctioned reason in the Bible. Yeah, that sort of thing. And so I was like, no, you're going to have to figure it out and work through it. And so I did literally everything to figure it out and to try to figure out, okay, well, I can't control my partner. I can control myself. So how can I adjust my behaviors to make sure that I am communicating well, I am managing my emotions, I am making sure that I am not blowing up on my partner, I'm holding space both for myself and for them. So I had to learn a lot of skills, and I spent a lot of time learning a lot of skills to make sure that I provided the best possible environment for our relationship.
Yeah.
And for me to show up to the relationship. So that started then. There, of course, were layers. So I would only say that I reached a tier, but there still was a lot more to do in terms of not stuffing things down.
Right.
Because part of that, of course, would be abandoning myself and hiding and not honoring feelings that I was having because it could lead to an explosion for my partner.
For sure.
So that was a layer as I learned more about how to manage those environments and how to, stay with my experiences and have better clarity about that, which is ultimately what led me to be confident with, I need to get divorced.
Yeah. Right.
And then after that, then I feel like, gosh, the last couple years, I would say even the last 4 years, I've really paid a lot of attention to my emotions. But I mean, since being in therapy the last year and a half, it's such a conscious decision. I'm coming to myself every single day and every single week, thinking and reflecting and trying to experience what's happening in my body.
Yeah.
And I don't think I did that for a long time. I mean, like I said, last few years is really when that happened.
How did you learn emotion regulation in your marriage? Was it therapy too?
No, self-help books.
Oh, okay.
So much so. That was the one good thing. There was a period of time where I was part of a MLM, a multi-level marketing company, a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
But which is a cult. They all feel like cults at least. But the one good thing that I'll take away from that, and I do think is true for most cults, is they start with personal growth. They start with selling you something.
Do.
Yeah, they do. They start with trying to sell you something that is actually good and beneficial information of trying to improve yourself because you have a problem, they have a solution. And the MLM that I was a part of, they didn't prescribe what things that you studied in the personal growth. And that was like the difference is, okay, well, you're self-guiding that. So for me, it was like, okay, well, the suggestion is you need to do 10 minutes of personal development a day. And so I just started researching like personal growth books and started just diving into them. And I like reading and I like studying. So there were things from it that I took away that I was like, oh, this causes me to think more about myself and to think more about my experiences and to be reflective and to learn how to communicate in a healthy way.
That's great.
That in business, I mean, I have a background in management, in finance. That was my degree. And part of that is just how do you communicate with people?
Yeah.
How do you manage team environments? How do you deal with conflict in that? And so I definitely took a lot out from that.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I was thinking for both clarity of self and emotion regulation, for me, it was being in therapy and also literally teaching emotion regulation skills, teaching DBT. So I had to learn those skills to do DBT group therapy. And they're literally called emotion regulation skills. So yeah. And I think also just experience, learning from experience and reflecting. And yeah, reflection is huge. You got to reflect. Yeah. All right. Give me an N. Needs ownership. So what does that mean? It means you own your needs. This is what is important to me. This is what I need. It's not selfish to have needs. I can recognize, honor, and advocate for my own needs without guilt or over-explaining. And that's pretty straightforward. This can be really hard though, even though it's straightforward, right? Because if you weren't allowed to have needs growing up, then this step can feel selfish when it's not selfish, it's necessary. Mm-hmm. And that's why we say being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Because centering yourself is saying, this is what I need. And I think I've mentioned this before. I have so many songs coming up and things coming up in my head, but there's this musical group called Zox, Z-O-X, and they have this song called Line in the Sand, but it's, this is how I feel, this is where I stand, this is what I can do, and this is who I am. It just explains it perfectly. And it encourages you to take responsibility for meeting your needs and protecting yourself and self-care.
Yeah.
So that strengthens what we would call an internal locus of control, right? Like I have influence over my life because these are my needs and I'm going to take care of me.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. Do you know?
It's split again. Like I definitely recognize the internal locus of control, and I developed that pretty strongly in college. I had a professor that was so gung-ho about this sort of stuff. So I definitely recognized that at that point and like learned that and realized, okay, the only person that you can influence and control and change is yourself. So you're going to have to take responsibility for that. And that goes along, of course, with the things that I needed in life. And even when I approached my last relationship, on our first date, this guy had asked me, this was his one redeeming question. The date was terrible. Terrible. We both agreed it was terrible. The date was absolutely awful until the very end of the date. He asked this question. He said, "Are you happy?" And I said, this is verbatim what I said. And I said, yeah. And I don't need you to make me fucking happy. Just like that. And what I meant at that moment was like, hey, I recognize that it's my responsibility to take care of my happiness and my personal self. Yes, there should always be mutual engagement within your relationship. It's not like you guys check out and you live in two separate universes and you just like live together and sleep together. Like it's not that.
Well, part of you saying I'm in charge of my happiness is knowing what you need and advocating for that. And if he doesn't meet that, then recognizing you're not compatible and walking away.
Yes, which I think, and that's the difference is for a long time, I had a lot of guilt over that. But over the last probably again, like 3-4 years, I became more and more aware of that and was able to stand in that and take authority and say, yeah, okay, there are things that I need and things that just are and are not compatible in my life, whether that's friendships or relationships. And I think the last year is just really, as we've been doing the podcast too, the more that it's at the forefront of your mind, for me, the more that it's at the forefront of my mind and the more that I'm considering these things, the more I reflect on this in my choices. And my choices become more aligned with what my values are, clarity of self, right?
Yeah, you're integrating it all.
Yeah. So I would say the guilt and over-explaining thing, that is what's gone away in recent time where I've kind of leveled it up. But I do feel like, gosh, the last like 10, 15 years, I have accepted that, okay, it's my responsibility to make myself happy and advocate for my needs.
Wow. So interesting. So in high school and in the beginning of college, I learned that having needs is bad because then you pressure or obligate other people to meet them. And then that's bad for them. And I learned that because my experience was fear, obligation, and guilt, the fog we've talked about in other episodes of I have to take care of other people's needs and abandon myself for that. And I never wanted to do that to anyone. So I thought I need to not have needs. And then it morphed into I can have needs, but I can only obligate the people closest to me, like my romantic partner or my best friends, because in relationships, you're supposed to take care of each other and it's give and take. And
they signed up for this shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember explaining to one of my exes, who I'm actually still friends with, and I love it. We started dating when we were 14 years old and we were together until we were 23. Still see him every weekend, him and his wife and his kids and our dogs play. And I love the fact that he has seen my whole evolution and we know each other so well and, care about each other so much. But I remember saying to him in high school, because he's like, your needs are unrealistic. And I remember thinking, well, I have standards and this is me having self-worth and knowing what I'm worth, and you signed up for this and I'm not like this with everyone, but if you want to be this close to me, then yeah, you have to meet my needs. So it was kind of like I swung from not having any needs to, well, I do need my needs met. And I think I also didn't know how to meet my own needs yet. Yeah. And I also think there were a lot of things that I labeled as needs that weren't needs. I literally, gosh, you all are really learning a lot about my immature, weak ego self before I developed a little bit more. But, this is an insane story. So I had a dance recital in high school, and on the way, so he didn't know that you're supposed to bring flowers, that you're supposed to bring a bouquet of flowers. And he realized that on the way there, I guess someone mentioned something to him. So he stopped on the side of the road and picked wildflowers to make me a bouquet. And when he gave it to me, I threw them on the ground because I saw it. I know it's awful. The fact that we're still friends. I mean, we laugh and I apologize. I mean, he also has developed a lot, but yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So
damn, girl.
I was like, you couldn't get me real flowers. But this is a good example of also like the community that I grew up in. Yeah. If someone stopped and put wildflowers together, like you're going out of your way to make a bouquet yourself, and they're wildflowers. How beautiful, how wholesome. No, I was mad because you clearly don't care enough about me that you didn't think to go get a proper bouquet. What?
I would like to point out, Allie loves wildflowers now.
Yes.
Whenever I send Allie flowers, I look for locally grown, often wildflower type vibes.
Oh my gosh, Katie's like found the best florist in Vermont, I swear. I mean, it always has some cool, they're beautiful, but they're also really cool and kind of like, I don't even want to say rustic because they're look
eclectic.
Rustic. They're eclectic and they're like, it's like a kind of like a fairy tale flower. It has some like magic or some like
mystic.
Yes, mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always like some cool thing in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And I cringe when I think back to my past selves. And owning your needs prevents entitlement because you are saying this is my responsibility to take care of this. And I don't obligate or expect you or judge you or tear down your character or take it personally when you aren't doing the things that I want. So for me, I would have said in the past, well, it's my need to have a boyfriend who is thoughtful about me and plans ahead and gets and it's like, that's Allie, that's not, is it something that you want in a relationship to have that? Yeah. Also, what he did shows a lot of thoughtfulness and care, but that's a whole other conversation. But those are things that you want. And if you're not getting that, then you just shouldn't be in the relationship. It's not go after their character and be mad at them. So yeah, there were a lot of things that are like, oh, if I've had a bad day, then I need you to surprise me with something like ridiculous stuff.
Or I
If
need
you
to
loved
know my
me,
needs without me communicating them.
yes. So I have come a long way. And part of us sharing this is hopefully to show, I'm showing these cringy, embarrassing things about past me that hopefully it can reduce some shame for you all. Because, this is why I don't judge other people who are earlier in the journey. Because it's like, I don't want to be where they were. I was where they were. They don't know where they are. I didn't know where I was, So,
yeah.
Okay. Give me a T. All right. So T is for truthful communication. So this is about speaking your truth clearly, of course, kindly, even when it's uncomfortable, and saying what needs to be said. And we use truthful communication when we're being assertive, when we're setting boundaries, when we're holding boundaries, when we're being pressured to change them. We are being truthful when we repair and apologize, and we're being truthful with ourselves, right? Truthful communication is about being real with yourself and telling the truth, recognizing the truth about what's going on. So you can see how you need to be able to move into more mature defense mechanisms, because we all have them, right? We can't just have primitive defense mechanisms that distort and deny reality if we want to have truthful communication. So, and when we are honest communicators, that gives us integrity, and it allows us to relate and interact with other people in an authentic way. And it also helps us navigate conflict better, because instead of just going after someone's character or just jumping to conclusions and making something up, you're staying with what's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to be honest. Of course, if we're honest without compassion, that's just cruel. But compassion without honesty is codependent.
Yeah.
We need to have that honesty of, again, going back to the needs. For example, let's say, I'm just thinking about codependence, and what's true is that I have this boundary that protects my needs, and you are asking me to get out of my seat and cross that boundary in order to take care of you. And unfortunately, I can't do that. And I can share that with compassion and say, I wish I could, but I can't. But what I won't do is turn my back on the truth and be dishonest with myself and with you and cross that boundary, because that's just harming myself. And then that is the opposite of needs ownership.
Yeah. Truthful communication. On the one hand, I don't give myself enough credit for truthful communication. When I reflect back and I look at the receipts, you have even seen, I remember there was one point back when we lived together, you even saw numerous amounts of communications that I had with my ex-husband during my marriage and divorce.
Yeah.
So you can reflect that to me, and like I was clear in many things.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And kind.
Yeah.
And intentional. I didn't shame, or like I just called out behaviors. That being said, my struggle with truthful communication is I see the broken person in front of me and I speak to the broken person. Meaning, if and when I've been with a partner with a weak ego, I have tailored the communication in a way that is more considerate of how they receive it than of how I need to say it. And that's the piece that I'm working on. And have been actively working on. But like, I remember there was one point, there was a situation with a person that I was dating, where it was a financial situation, and the financial situation was negatively impacting me in a very big way. I was financially supporting this person, and I was calling them out for, hey, you haven't held up your end of the bargain for this situation, and now I'm in harm's way. Basically, I won't be able to make rent if this is not addressed like it should have been months ago and like I've been asking for. And I remember when I brought that and I said it very directly, they came back at me, weak ego, with oh, well, I don't like how you're talking to me. And how I was talking to them was not harmful. It was direct.
Right.
It
Yeah,
was,
but
hey,
they didn't
this is
like
the behavior.
That.
They didn't like that because it held them accountable.
Yes.
Yes. And my struggle with truthful communication is when that happens, I back down. And then I say, okay, well, hey, so it would be really nice if this is what I need, and I like, it's really harming me, and like, babe, if you could just please, like, and becoming more the fun thing, right?
Right.
And so that's my area for, okay, I need to work on improving this, or giving them an out, not from the sense of an out to complete the behavior that I need changed, but an out for the reason behind the behavior. Like, oh my God, I know you've been really stressed, and I know this probably hasn't been on top of the priorities, and like, there's been so much going on for you, and I want to hold space for that. And this thing needs to be addressed. And while both of those things can be true, one of them really puts me out of my seat.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's the piece that I have had to be far more aware of. Now, again, in hindsight, being 2020, I am incredibly self-critical. And if I go back through the receipts of all of the times I've communicated, I have been direct. And I could have been more direct and had less fluff.
Yeah, getting out of your seat, the mental part of getting out of your seat is going into their perspective, which is all distorted from all the defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
So you're in their twisted Twilight Zone alternative reality, and you're trying to speak in a way that fits within that reality. And so in order to fit within defense mechanisms that distort or deny the truth, you have to distort that a little bit in your delivery.
Yeah.
And that is part of getting out of your seat.
Yeah.
Which if y'all have only started listening to the podcast recently, go back and listen to, I think it's episode 2 or 3, where we talk about staying in your seat. Very
That's like
important.
foundational here.
Foundational self-centered curriculum. Yes. So for me, I think I've always been a truth seer, a truth teller, a truth speaker, but I definitely have omitted things that would upset people. Initially, I started with over-explaining because I thought, oh, maybe I didn't say it the right way or in the way that they would understand it. And I said it hundreds of different ways, and gosh, I'm like banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to say this. And after hundreds of times and years of saying it in different ways, I learn about defense mechanisms and realize, oh, it's actually just the truth that they don't want to hear. So it actually doesn't matter the delivery system for the truth. So I started there, and then it swung to, okay, well, that doesn't work, or that gets me in trouble. So then I'll hide and I'll omit the truth, and then realizing, oh, that's not good either. And then I think I was a little too cutting in sharing truth without compassion. So I think I've kind of been all over the map, and I just didn't know, how do you do no harm but take no shit? Like, I had to figure out the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness, which we should do an episode on communication styles. And it's confusing. It's hard to figure out the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness because people with weaker egos will receive your assertiveness and say it's aggressive.
Yeah.
And so it's really confusing and hard to figure that out. But then I finally figured it out. And now I feel really confident in my ability to speak the truth. And my goal when I'm communicating is to be as honest and clear as possible. Well, within reason, I should say. Mm-hmm. Honest and clear as possible within reason. I'm not going to over-explain. And if they don't understand me, and it's clear that they're trying to understand me and they want to know what's really true and they want to get it, I'll work with them to try to, explain more. But if it's clear that they don't want to understand me and they're invested in misunderstanding me or ignoring or distorting me, then yeah, I'm not going to keep going, but at least I spoke my truth regardless of whether or not they took it or understood it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, truthful communication is hard because you'll get a lot of pushback and anger, and it takes a lot of courage. So this is something that we can always be working on, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. All right. 4 left.
Sorry.
For embodiment. So we've talked a lot about feeling your feelings, being in your body, right? Because that's your internal guidance system. So you want to live in your body, tune into the physical signals that show you when you're aligned versus when you're abandoning yourself, and then honor those signals your body is sending you. Identify the message and act on it. This helps us stay differentiated in ourselves, know who we are. It really helps with clarity of self and that we are separate from others. So they're having a feeling, they're having a reaction, and that's valid for them. But I need to be with my truth and my experience so that I don't bypass it and get enmeshed with them and not know where do I start and they begin. So we talk a lot about red light, green light. Let me think about an example of this. Well, I guess I gave an example in the last episode, in the gaslighting episode, of using the body cue of, oh, this is how I felt when I did something I regretted in the past. So I'm going to do this thing differently now.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the past, I definitely wasn't embodied at all. I mean, my body felt things, but I just reacted to it. I didn't stay with it and figure out what is it telling me. And part of that is because I didn't have emotion regulation skills, right? I couldn't hold it. I got flooded by it. So
yeah. I would say for me, the embodiment thing, the key difference probably in the last year and a half when I really started diving deeper into somatic work. I had touched on it when I was getting divorced with my first therapist, but I just wasn't able to stay with that therapist super long because of insurance issues. But regardless, in the last year and a half when I've spent a lot more time doing somatic work, I've actually realized that my body's not broken. Because that's the view that I had, is that, okay, well, my anxiety is because my body's broken. My brain doesn't work right. I would say that all the time.
I get that because you're probably like, why is it doing this? Like, why can't I just be calm? Why am I overreacting?
Well, and especially when I was growing up. So this is a big part of my identity growing up. My parents would always say this, every school teacher that I had would say this, but the overwhelming comment was, Katie has a mind like a steel trap. Oh. I do not forget things. I was always on it. Like any information, I could recall anything, almost to the point of a photographic memory too. When I'm recalling things, I would immediately envision the room. I'd envision the page that something was written on and where on the page it was. Like that was the level that my brain was functioning at. And it was all the time. It was why I was so good in school. And then trauma happened.
Right, yeah.
And my marriage and my divorce and all the things within it. And my brain did not work right anymore. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was so painful because it felt like my identity was stripped because I couldn't connect to the thing that for so long was a core part of who I was, oh yeah, I have this really strong mind. I can remember anything. I can function at a really high level. I can perform really well because of this. And then when it was like, okay, well, panic attacks are in, anxiety is in, executive functioning is out. We are not remembering anything. We can't recall data or information. You feel like you're in a tunnel constantly. The world is super dark. And I'm just constantly flooded and it's outside of my control. Yeah. All of the work that I did to have an internal locus of control, damn near out the window because of all of that.
So scary.
Yes. And I thought that I was broken. So whenever I would have feelings and sensations in my body, I was like, oh, that's another part of me being broken. That's another symptom of this anxiety and PTSD that I have, as opposed to it's a signal. Your
Right.
body is screaming for help and trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
And there's actually a connection to it. And now it's like, okay, I've spent enough time doing somatic work that it's like, oh, I'm noticing tightness in my jaw. Interesting. I wonder what it is that's coming up for me. Let me sit with that for a minute and
Yeah.
consider what it is that comes to me that I might not be paying attention to, that my body is trying to warn me of,
Yes.
before it turns into a whole full body experience where I'm
Yeah.
tense and I'm anxious and I'm freaking out and I'm like not able to, like, yeah, just whole new
Yes.
world.
Yeah. And then that leads to the ability to own your needs and take care of yourself, which makes you feel more in control. It also helps with clarity of self. It's just all these things
It's
work
all
together.
connected.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like these are all things that help you get centered in yourself.
Oh my God, no way.
Wow. All right. R, reciprocity in relationships. Invest only in mutual connections that support your growth, not just your usefulness of what you do for them. So you just ask yourself, is this relationship mutual?
Mm-hmm.
This helps prevent codependence and overfunctioning and idealizing and devaluing yourself and others, because you are just like, yeah, it's got to be equal. Does it have to be equal all the time? No, right? In relationships, it's like, I'm having a rough time. Katie's supporting me a little more. She's having a rough time. I'm supporting her a little more. But overall, we're not feeling like we're draining ourselves or abandoning ourselves for the other person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a huge realization for me that the majority of my relationships were not reciprocal. They were not mutually beneficial. And I kind of had to go through and end a lot of, well, I tried to change them and improve them at first, but there were a lot of weak egos that got upset by that and didn't have the skills to be able to work through this, right? Because giving feedback of, I don't feel like this is mutual and I want to improve it in these ways, feels like an attack, feels like too much, right? And so distort, deny, project, all that. So I had to end a lot of relationships because I realized that they weren't mutual and they couldn't be. And it was really hard for me to recognize that because I knew that there was going to be a period of my life where I felt a lot more alone.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like this bridge. I think of it as this bridge. It was this time in life where, I felt the emptiness of the people that I had to let go of. And then, I started to then connect with people who were more on the level of where I was in my journey. And this is why people can outgrow each other. I mean, sometimes it's just they're both healthy and, they like different things and it just doesn't make sense anymore. But sometimes when someone in a relationship starts working on themselves and the other person refuses to, you will outgrow them because, well, now you're in a different place in your ego maturity. And and you see a lot of things. It is really a huge step to be able to recognize and name, okay, these relationships aren't mutually beneficial. I need to work on that. If that's not going to change, I need to move on from them. But know that probably there's going to be pushback. And I definitely experienced a lot of anger from other people. And hopefully this ego series has helped you be able to recognize when a reaction actually isn't about you and it's more just a defense mechanism.
Yeah, definitely. So the reciprocity in relationships, the R, for me, that dot did not connect until we did an episode on this recently where I talked about me realizing that I had this core belief that I was unlovable. That was when it all clicked. And I was like, oh shit, wait, I have fostered relationships where I am required to people please and I'm required to make myself useful in order for the relationship to exist, or I gravitate towards those relationships particularly. I will say I am very fortunate in the last few years of my life. I am within a community that loves me for me in terms of like my gym family and whatnot. And those are also my coworkers. And like, that's a big part of my life. I am super fortunate in that. And even if I didn't realize the unlovable thing that exists and is affirming of reciprocity in relationship, but without me recognizing that, I would not be actively choosing and gravitating and
Yeah.
positioning myself to continue to prioritize those relationships above the other ones, right? And I'm very fortunate as well that when I got out of the relationships that were truly causing me harm, it also got rid of the secondary relationships that were based off of people pleasing and my usefulness. Meaning, like when I left my marriage, okay, well, there were people surrounding that
Right.
relationship that had connection based off of my performance,
Yes.
not just we are mutually beneficial to each other. So getting out of the marriage, okay, well, they got offended towards me because, whatever. Yeah, they got offended towards me. So then now we're no longer friends. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Well, that just naturally filtered that out.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of lucked out on that.
Rejection is protection.
Yeah.
All right. The third E is ego awareness. Notice when your inner critic or approval seeking self is driving the bus, and then consciously recenter to your authentic self. So you can practice spotting, how am I protecting myself right now? Am I criticizing myself? Am I performing? Am I managing aspects of my behavior or how I'm showing up or masking in some way? This piece, I mean, hopefully the whole series helps you, but I'm just thinking about episodes 1 and 2 where we talked about the way that you grow up and whether or not your true self is seen and supported and taken care of. And when it's not, there's this false self that develops. So we all probably have some level of false self, right? Even if you have a great family. I mean, we do have a culture that values certain things and doesn't value other things, right? So we're all going to have these parts of ourselves that aren't really us. And so just continuing to be curious about that. And did this feel like me? Okay, did I feel like there was pressure for me to be this certain way? Where does that come from? It just really helps you to reflect and also recognize, hey, am I accepting reality or am I rejecting reality? Am I projecting on them? And then listen to the last episode to make sure that you're not overthinking that and gaslighting yourself into thinking that you're distorting reality when it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this series should hopefully cover everything. I mean, obviously, you can do a lot of ego awareness work in therapy. The types of therapy would be psychodynamic. Internal family systems is kind of like a different language and words and labels for psychodynamic, right? It's like all about parts. Okay, well, there's a pleaser part, there's a performer part, right? Like there's a masking part, a hiding part, like, and they're there to protect you. So that can help as well. Anything that has any kind of psychodynamic piece to it or experiential piece or somatic piece, you really want to get deeper and identify what's underneath the surface. And it's probably these things that are trying to protect you. I think that's how you also recognize defense mechanisms, is by being in your body and they pop up and you're like, oh shit, didn't even know that was there. So,
I just want to take a random pause. This is like a really big aside, but I just want to say I have so much admiration and appreciation for how much work and study and knowledge you have done.
Thank you.
Because I've heard bits and pieces, even from, I mean, I've had a couple therapists in my life, and obviously I've done a lot of the personal growth stuff, but like you hear bits and pieces of it, but never the full picture. And you really do have such a good grasp of all of these different modalities and parts and pieces and how they come together to
Thanks.
inform yourself, you as a human, and other people. And I mean, if you didn't do the work that you've done, not just for yourself, but also like for your clients and for your practice and for your profession, we wouldn't be here. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's also the way my brain learns, though. It's like, it's good, but it's really annoying because I can't just learn, like, I have to see the forest and the trees. So I have to become a fucking expert on everything and then see how it all connects. But once I get to the end of that process, then it's like, this is awesome. Like, I'm super clear. But until I'm super clear, I'm really confused. But thank you. I appreciate that. So just really quick. So for me, ego awareness. Yeah, I had no awareness of any of this stuff until less than 10 years ago. It was AEDP. I have talked about this before on the pod. I went to a training because I was trying to get my work to pay for a flight to my friend's bachelorette. And there was a training there and where the bachelorette was. So I was like, perfect, I'll take it. Ended up changing my life. I was like, I need to become a client of this. Really helped me recognize all of these things. It was what really started me becoming self-centered, and I had been seeking for a long time and in other types of therapy for a long time. And then I became a practitioner, and obviously that has helped a lot too, because now I do have this big understanding, and the ego awareness has changed my life. And that's why I'm so glad we did this series. And just even you saying, Katie, like, since we did these episodes, I've realized that this isn't about me. I mean, you've made my month, my year. I don't even know. It's huge. It's like, if I want this pain to turn into purpose, like that's it.
Yeah. And that's what I would say for myself is like, honestly, this ego series really just opened my eyes. I mean, like, so much of it I knew intellectually. And then in a separate box somewhere, I felt things. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I'm feeling. But like the connecting piece, the part that bridged the two together was not there. And then we did the ego series and I'm like, oh
yeah.
What? Because that also, it gave me the opportunity to hold compassion and space for the version of myself that was not who I want to be.
Yes. Good.
Which is like, it just connects the emotional and the intellectual really well for me. And now
you can love the weak ego parts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good.
It makes way more sense now. And it feels right and feels aligned.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love it. Okay.
Look at us go.
And then we're at the end. Directed by values. We're directed by values. When we center ourselves, then we are directed.
And me, I'm like, we want the D.
We want the D. Here at Self Centered, we want the D, whether it's a strap on or a real one. Just kidding.
Whatever your flavor is, it's fine. It doesn't matter. You don't have to want the D. But we just want to be directed by values.
Oh my gosh, we are at the end. We are wrapping this up. All right. So what does it mean to be directed by values? You spend your time, your energy, and your decisions are all based on your deepest values, not just what's expected of you, other people's values, not based on habit. It's what matters to you. Yeah. And so are you living for approval or are you living for alignment? It really comes back to that. When you are directed by values, this really helps you to have this internal compass that strengthens the ability to stay centered and stay with yourself, because then you aren't collapsing from outside pressure. You can just go back to, well, what matters to me? What are my values? We also have an episode on self-esteem and values. We might even have another episode about, we have one about self-esteem and we have one about values.
I think so.
Yeah, go back and find that. So when your life reflects your values, not what other people tell you that you should value, then you trust yourself, you like yourself, and you create that life that centers you. Yeah, brings it all together. We're values oriented. Let's see. I, for a really long time, was not directed by my values. Well, I guess I should say my values were fucked. They weren't mine, but I thought they were mine because I identified with them because I wanted to be good. And I thought, these are the set of values that if I internalize them, it makes me good. So they must be my values because I want to be good. So, okay, I have to abandon myself to be there for other people, because if I'm not, then I'm selfish. So for a really long time, I did that. And then I literally couldn't do it anymore. I probably would have kept doing it if I could have sustained it. Like truly, we would not be here talking today about being self-centered if I could have sustained abandoning myself, but I couldn't. So I had to look at, okay, well, this is, I feel trapped because I always say hopeless, helpless, trapped. That's exactly how I felt, because I was like, I can't abandon myself anymore, but I feel like I'm abandoning them if I choose myself. So I had to really look at the ways that I was abandoning myself and figure out what are the quote unquote values that I've been taught or the beliefs that I've been taught that's getting in the way of me centering myself and taking care of myself, owning my needs, setting those boundaries, maintaining those boundaries. And now we're here. Long story short.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just I've become so much more conscious of it now. Because, like, there are many things that I do feel like my values in many ways are consistent from before I was aware of it to now. But again, it was okay, well, yes, I would abandon myself and I would gas myself when someone would tell me that, oh, no, that's not true. Or like this offended me. Because again, I'm surrounding myself by people who need me and therefore likely have a weaker ego.
Yes.
That like codependency sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And that would just continue to affirm that, oh, okay, well, I'm doing the right things, but I'm not because they're telling me that I'm not. So therefore, I'm questioning myself.
I know.
Yeah, it just gets really fucking twisted and confusing. Even though if I'm going and reflecting back, and every time anyone with a clear mirror has reflected it back to me, it's like, oh no, girl, you were actually doing exactly what you said you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were showing up like you said you were.
Right.
You were being the person that you aspired to be. Mm-hmm. They were just choosing not to see it or receive it.
They had a distorted mirror, aka lots of those
Defense mechanisms.
primitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, again, I'm clear on it. Like I can identify, oh no, this is the choice that I made and this is how it's in alignment with my values. And these are what my values are.
Right. Yep.
As opposed to, okay, just generally what feels aligned. There was a feeling, but there was no intellectual on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or there was an intellectual, do the right thing, but not a feeling.
Yeah.
Now they're connected.
Yep.
Yeah.
Integrated.
Yep.
Aww.
Love it.
Okay. Well, there you have it. That is the centered framework. So hope you have been thinking as we were talking about, okay, well, where am I? And if you wanted to, you could think about where have you been as well and note and give yourself credit for all the progress you've made. And, you're listening right now. That shows that you are committed to working on this. So that's great. It's good for you. It's good for the world. And we will be coming out with more in the future to help you with this. But remember that you can do this work on your own too. It's just about knowing the pillar that you want to work on. And then you can be intentional about, okay, well, am I going to get some self-help books? Am I going to just listen to this specific episode of the podcast to work on that and then start practicing that? Am I going to go to therapy? Am I going to have another selfie buddy that I can work on this with and check in with? There are lots of ways to do this, but knowing what the pillars are, I think creates a map and a guide for you, and it'll bring you back to yourself.
We love that.
All right, we will see you next week. I was going to let you say bye.
Allie doesn't like when I always say peace.
Yeah.
It's the same. So I just threw the peace signs up.
And didn't say anything. All right.
Didn't say anything. Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye, 3 E's in the center. Framework E. See you later. Bye. Okay. That might have been really annoying. We'll see if we can leave it. Okay, bye. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.